We are going to get started. So today, thank you for joining us and welcome to the FSKA Temporary License Subcommittee. Today, hopefully you guys all saw the change in agenda, and we're really just going to be going over the recommendations, kind of showing those to you and sharing those, and then having you review a couple items that the last few presentations we had, so we can make sure that those are finalized. So before we get started, we'll walk through the protocols and then go through introductions and the feedback loop. So first, as a reminder, we all are aware of these. Please mute yourself or turn your camera off if you're like moving around or there's a lot going on around you throughout the meeting, but feel free to unmute to share thoughts, comments, suggestions during the meeting, because obviously this is a smaller group, so we don't really hold you to stay muted. You're always more than welcome to put stuff in the chat too, so we will respond to that, and we'll probably ask you to unmute if we need clarification for anything. But if you're comfortable, you're more than welcome to unmute and verbally share at any given time. If you have any problems with your audio or video, please feel free to email us at the dcyf.communityengagement@dcyf.wa.gov email address. So we'll be monitoring that throughout today's meeting. All right, next. Okay, so before we do introductions, we're gonna pop in the feedback loop document into the chat, so you can see that really quickly and then review it and let us know if you have any questions on that. There it is. Okay, so Emily just put that in the chat. So if you want to click on it, download it, and then just open it, feel free to take a few minutes to review it and let us know if you have any questions.
Won't open for me.
Yeah, is there a way to share it where we don't have to download it?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Can we share that on the screen? And it's not that long, so we can look at it for those of you that can't download it.
Sorry, it'll just take me a
No worries, Jess.
We will also get this sent out to you guys with a follow-up email, so you'll have it in your email inboxes as well.
Perfect. So it's up on the screen. Does everyone see that? Okay, great. So Jess, if you want to go scroll up a little bit further. No, sorry, down. Sorry, just keep scrolling. There you go. Okay, scroll a little bit further. Perfect. I'm just monitoring your guys' facial expressions. So if you need us to go back up, feel free to say so.
I just want to call it, I just noticed a typo. There's a question, do federal rules allow for a window of time for unannounced visits? And then that question is just repeated. So I'm going to do some digging and see if we have that answer yet, or if we were still waiting to hear back. I know Matt Judge had reached out, but I think apologies for that typo. That will be fixed when we send it out with the follow-up.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, can you scroll to the next page, Jess? There you go. All right, does anyone have any questions on this feedback loop? Okay, well, we'll send this out, like Emily mentioned, in the follow-up email, and then she'll check on the one piece, because I know, yeah, like she said, Matt was sharing a bunch of answers and responses to some of the questions that you guys had. So sorry, Emily, go ahead.
I just found the update, and he had reached out but had not heard back as of the last time that we communicated. So we'll follow up with him to see if he's heard back yet on that question, but we don't have a response to that first question yet. But the second one, he did hear back.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, Jess, you can go back to our slide deck. There you go. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to do introductions, and we're just going to open it up. So whoever wants to share first can share verbally. So just share your name, where you're located, whether you're a center, family home, FFN provider, etc., public attendee, or DCYF staff. And then the question of the day, what are you most looking forward to this fall? Anyone want to go first?
I can start. I'm Rebecca from Green Gable Children's Learning Center. I'm in Spokane. We are a center, and I really, really like those spiced pumpkin seeds that they sell at Trader Joe in the fall.
Ooh, I've never tried those. I make my own, but I haven't tried Trader Joe's.
They are delicious.
I don't want to get addicted to something though.
I'll go real quickly. I'm Susan Brown. I'm the founder and CEO of Kids Co, located in Seattle. We're a nonprofit licensed childcare organization. And what am I looking forward to most in the fall? I'm going to say I'm looking forward most to winter solstice, because then the next day is 10 seconds of daylight longer. So for me, the fall and winter are not my favorite time. Thank you.
I'll go next. Angela Hicks Maxey. I'm located in Seattle. We are a child care center multi-site, and I am mostly looking for fall to end so that it'll be Christmas time.
I'm Julie Schroth. I run Creative Kids Learning Center in Port Orchard, located in Kitsap County. So I'm a center, and well, I'm looking forward to, we're moving. We bought a new house, so we're moving next month.
I'll go. My name is Erica Lanier. I'm the CEO of Cdub Life Center for Early Learning. We have 4 locations in Seattle, and I'm here because Angie asked me to come, and so I'm here. And I I just had another grandbaby last night there yesterday morning, 125. So I'm looking forward to that grandbaby and then my other grandbaby coming during the holidays.
That is so exciting.
It is. And welcome to your first meeting here.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Hi, I am Colleen Condon and I own Lilac City Early Learning Center in Spokane, Washington, which is a center. And I am most looking forward to several little mini vacations I have planned with my sister. She recently moved to Seattle. She is my person in this world. And so immediately when I knew she was moving, I started looking for events that would be an excuse to go to Seattle. So one of our first it's actually a Post Malone concert in November, and she lives like literally a block away from the venue. So I think it's going to be really fun.
Nobody can beat Colleen's update. So,
I could beat it.
okay.
No problem. Always. Hi, my name is Brian Trumbull. I'm in Spokane, Washington. I'm a private early learning center. And what am I looking forward to this fall? September. Because all of September is my birthday month. And I cannot get enough attention. So definitely beats Colleen's.
She said, nice try, Brian.
It wasn't a try, it was a do, and I did.
And then there's happy birthday in the chat. Happy birthday month.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, so I'm just gonna start calling. I see, how about Dana Christensen? All right, let's see, she might be away. Aliza?
Hello, my name is Aliza Yair. I'm with DCYF. My pronouns are she, her, and they, them. I live in Ravensdale, which is ancestral Muckleshoot land. And I am looking forward to the leaves changing color and falling. I just really love actually seeing leaves on the ground.
Sorry, I got knocked off, but I was going to jump on and introduce myself. I'm Dana Christensen from Clark County, Washington. I own centers here, and I am most looking forward to college football. I've got kids at WCU. That's it.
Fall football, that's so exciting. Travis?
Hello, Travis Hansen, work with DCYF. Good to see folks. And I think I'm just similar. I'm just looking forward to the crisp morning air and those fall mornings that are nice. Putting a sweatshirt on.
Hi there, my name is Eric LaFontaine. I am a DCYF staff on the community engagement team located in Lakewood, and I am looking forward to seeing my new grandbaby as well.
When is your grandbaby slated to arrive?
She's actually here. She's
Oh.
like 3 months old, and I've seen
Oh.
her 2 times. So I'm just dying, to see her again. So we've got like 4 different trips already planned. So fall's going to be good.
That's so nice.
I can go next. My name is Emily Morgan, and I am in Spokane on the lands of the Spokane tribe. And I'm a DCYF staff on the community engagement team. And I am most looking forward to meeting my own baby this fall. I'm due next week. So today is actually my last day of work before I'm starting my maternity leave. So I jumped in after Eric because you're going to be seeing a lot more of him. He's great. And he's going to be picking up right where we've left off, and you'll be hearing from him a little bit more later today too. So yeah, it's been really great working on all of this with you all, and yeah, I'm just excited to meet my baby. So
Emily, is this your first?
yep.
That's also so exciting.
Lots of fall babies.
Yep, we are all excited to meet the baby. Jess Spencer.
Well, that's a hard one to follow, but I am Jessica Spencer on the community engagement team at DCYF. I'm currently in Richland, Washington, and looking forward to finalizing my move to Spokane, Washington this fall. That's it.
I think we've got everyone that's on here so far. So I'm Deanna Stewart, the Deputy Director of Community Engagement. So let's see, I'm located in Pierce County, DCYF staff. Looking forward to this fall. So lots of change, so fall change. And my brother is actually moving. So similar to Colleen, my brother is moving not closer, he's actually moving across country. And so I am helping him move across country, taking a road trip together. So it's somewhat bittersweet to see him off, but we're pretty close. So it'll be a very happy, emotional time, but it'll be fun to make the memories. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I am going to turn it over to Emily to kick off the rest of the meeting.
Okay, Jess, if you want to bring up the Jamboard, great, thank you. It's a little bit small on my screen, but we are going to start out today going into probably just 2 groups. I recognize we don't have a ton of people in attendance today, but at our last meeting, we got some feedback that you guys wanted to really do these recommendations in the meeting. So we're going to start out working on developing recommendation language for the past 2 topics that were talked about, unlicensed care and the child care provider Bill of Rights document. So we're going to put you into 2 different groups, and Jess will share the Jamboard link in the chat, and you guys can work on the Jamboard to review the feedback that you gave us on unlicensed care. So that's what the first page is on. And then the second page, if you can click to the next arrow, thank you, is where you and your group can develop suggested recommendation language around unlicensed care for DCYF. And then the third page, thanks, Jess, is the feedback that we received on the child care provider Bill of Rights document. And so then the 4th page is where you guys will work together to develop recommendation language regarding the Bill of Rights document. And then we'll come back as a large group and kind of finalize that, have you guys finalize that language all together.
Emily, I noticed Lois joined, so I just want to give her an opportunity to introduce herself before we hop into groups.
Perfect, thank you. Welcome, Lois.
Lois, if you want to share like name, where you're from, provider, center, family home, I mean, center, and then what you're looking forward to most this fall.
Okay, Lois Martin, Director, Owner, Community Day Center for Children, located in the Central District of Seattle. And what am I looking forward to this fall? The holidays. I'm a summer baby. I'm not looking forward to fall or winter. I know it's coming. Just like in Game of Thrones, I still don't want it.
That's fair enough. At least
Thank you, Deanna.
At least we have the holidays. Thanks, Lois. Okay, so before you guys go into groups, do you have any questions about what you're going to be doing?
I have a question, not about what we're going to be doing, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Is this the last meeting? Are there more meetings for this? And we had also, in one of the meetings, it was brought up that maybe we should or could invite the authors of the legislation that created this group that asked for these recommendations to come and talk with the group about the recommendations. So if you could comment on that.
So this is like the last presentation type style meeting. So we're hoping to finalize recommendations this meeting, and then Eric will, lead with you all to go through the Elac process and talk with Elac about final recommendations so that they can also put those recommendations into their FSKA report that they submit to the legislature and to the governor's office. So just a reminder, this report goes to DCYF. So similar to what we did with the emergency background, the background check recommendation, this will be submitted to Ross, Secretary Hunter, and then all of these recommendations will go up to Elac because this is a subcommittee of Elac, and then they'll get to determine what recommendations they would like to include to move them further up the chain. Eliza, yeah, we've already spoken with the parent advisory group, so that's already embedded in this document that we're sharing. We already have parent input on the topics that they've wanted to weigh in on. So we talked about that the last meeting. We shared the parent input with this group. And then Julie, to your point about inviting the legislature, members of the legislature to come talk, that's what you're referencing, right? So, I mean, we can have that discussion. I would probably ask what would be the goal to have them come and talk about these recommendations so far.
Okay, well, as far as for me, DCYF is not obligated to put any of our recommendations in place unless it's legislated that they have to. That would be the reason for me.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So I think that I would suggest then when talking with Elac that you have that conversation, because some of those legislators are on Elac, the particular one of the bill that they actually used, right, for FSKA serves on Elac as a member of Elac. So I would definitely partner with Elac and then have that discussion. Maybe it's a separate special meeting to go over this report.
So is there time at an upcoming Elac meeting where this will be discussed? Is it, on an agenda?
It will go on the December meeting agenda for Elac. This is slated to be on December's agenda to have a presentation. And so you'll see an ask come out to all of the participants of this group. So a handful of you, if you all want to present these recommendations and kind of walk through them with Elac, that's going to be the intent. And let them know like what was heard. And I mean, you'll see the document. You guys have already seen this somewhat already, so it's not going to be a new document to you, but we have kind of put it in the format that you all have wanted it to be in, and then it shows provider input from this group, and then it shows parent input separately so that you can see the two differences if parents did want to weigh in on the certain topic at hand, the recommendation. And then kind of talking through that with Elac and having Elac better understand how these came about, and then have that conversation. I think that's a question for Elac to sit there and have the two groups come together, and whether it's talking to Senator Wilson during an Elac meeting or it's having a special meeting with Tonneson and Wilson together. Does that sound good? Do you not like that idea? What are your thoughts here?
No, I'm glad to hear that it's already slated to be on an upcoming meeting. You know, a section of time to be discussed. Is this, Aaron's not part of this work, right? The temporary license, okay.
No, but I am also on the Elac side, so Julie, I'll make sure that we connect these.
Okay, terrific, thank you.
And then Colleen, I see your comment, access, yes, as soon as this is final, we're gonna send this to you, and you all will see this version in the follow-up. We can send this version, but there will be the final version after this with whatever comments you bring up today. We will finalize this to the best of our abilities and have you review another version before we submit it up to Elac, because Elac will be the next reviewer. They won't sign off on it before it's submitted to DCYF. It's not theirs to sign off on. However, it is theirs to review, to put your recommendations into their report. So this will go up to DCYF leadership. It will be submitted to Secretary Hunter by November 1. And then Elac will be presented on the entirety of it during the December meeting. And so it won't go to session, but you'll have it, Colleen, to share during session if you choose to do so.
Sorry to jump in, but isn't it December 1, Deanna? Because there is a November 9th meeting.
November, well, I think it's November. The deadline's November.
Okay, so November 9th will be the wrap-up meeting of the subcommittee.
Yeah, if it's needed. We may not need these. Obviously, we scheduled these out based on our assumptions of how many meetings we would need to have. So if there's not a need to have one November 9th, there won't need to be one. But there is another one scheduled in October already, your guys' meeting.
Okay, so this report from this committee gets submitted independent of a report that Elac submits where they might incorporate some of the stuff from this report into theirs. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions about that process? All right, well, feel free to ask throughout this if you have any others. Emily, go ahead.
Okay, I think we did have one more person jump on if they wanted to introduce themselves. Arabella.
Hi, for some reason, I put the wrong number. That's my daughter's, but my name is Alondra.
Oh, Alondra.
Yeah.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about the Jamboard activity? We have, we were thinking about 20 minutes to go through those 2 pages, and then we'll come back as a large group. But if 20 minutes feels too long, feel free to jump back into the main group and we can start just discussing all together. All right, Jess, are there any questions before? Okay, you all should see the option to join a breakout room.
Emily, sorry, I just want to follow up about the parent advisory group thing. So it is going to go to them again?
Yeah, I wanted to
after-
check in. I wanted to check in with Deanna on that before we shared it with the whole group. But are we going to be sending out the list of recommendations to PAG for?
Like, so that they can confirm that they agree, given like changes that might be made since the last time?
So they've reviewed up until today.
Oh,
So
okay.
they
Right.
haven't seen these last two that they're talking about right now.
Mhm.
But also these topics, we typically ask the parents. Well, I mean, Emily and I kind of talk about whether this is an actual topic for parents. One, not all these topics are going to apply to a parent. So
Right.
we kind of talk with the parent to see if it applies and if they want to weigh in.
Right.
If they do, the next parent group meeting is in November. So there
Okay.
still is an opportunity for them to look
Okay.
at it if they're topics they do want to have a conversation on. Yes.
That makes sense. Thanks for clarifying. Also, the
Question to everybody is, is this group going to do the work to create that document and wordsmith it? Or is our recommendation that this document needs to be created and we want to spell out who would participate in creating that document? Because I feel like if we just look at this today and we just try to type up some things, like there needs to be a little bit more work for that. We're also not representative of everybody who would be impacted by this document. And that for me maybe needs to be its own intentional work group or something like that to actually do that work and create the document, but rather this group would be recommending that that document be created and maybe spell out who we think, at least start to suggest who should be participating in that work. And I think everything that I just said in regards to the Bill of Rights could also apply to the unlicensed care recommendations. More that, there should be, I don't know, the unlicensed care one, some of those are already kind of spelled out. But as far as this Bill of Rights document, I feel like that's something that there should be more contribution and intentionality around.
I'm confused too, because I sent an example during our last meeting of a Bill of Rights that I found. Remember, I put it in the chat. And then I thought we were gonna, because nobody even included this to be used as an example. Like, this is what another state does, and so I'm really confused on that whole thing, because we didn't get a chance to even create a Bill of Rights, never mind look at this. So I don't know where the disconnect is, but I think Colleen nailed it.
So the feedback I heard from the last meeting was that this group did want the provider support subcommittee to work on the provider Bill of Rights document. Did I mishear that?
But does provider supports really function that way? As far as, I do not attend provider supports as regularly as I do Elac, but there's certainly no work happening during an Elac meeting. Like, there is no wordsmithing of stuff and creating a product together. There's presentations on products that are being created and feedback being received, but there's not active work happening on that. I don't know if, I know Julie usually lead provider supports. Is it different in that space than Elac?
No, you're right. There's not a bunch of wordsmithing that goes on. There's not really time for that. It's a fair point.
Yeah. So I think provider support should definitely have input on who then is on this group. Maybe it is that in our recommendations, we say that we want DCYF to engage provider supports to get feedback on who the membership for this work group should be. But certainly this small of a group is not going to be representative of all of our childcare providers and get to a equitable document, without their voices.
Yeah, and the burden of the work shouldn't be on the providers. that are volunteering their time to be here. DCYF could create this provider support Bill of Rights thing by coming to provider supports and saying, this is what we think should be included, what's missing, and then come back and do another draft the next time or something.
I know this is my first time on here, but I was commenting on how in the beginning, you guys had presented something in a slide, and I read it as, if you are a provider that chose not to renew your license, then you would be penalized with fines. But the group was saying that because I had mentioned that if you are unlicensed, there should be a penalty or something happening, or a group giving those penalties. But what I had read in your presentation in the first couple of slides, that wasn't represented on here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And when we had the presentation when we had this discussion last time and Judy Bunkelman was on it, it was discussed a bit. And the reality is that if you or I or any of the providers on this group decided to drop their license, like so many in our community just are unlicensed the whole time. If we decide to drop our license, they will come after us and we will be fined, and they can impose those fines. But if you've never been licensed, they cannot impose fines. They don't have, I don't, none of us really understand why there's such a difference there. I guess the only mechanism is if you have subsidy, they could drop your subsidy. They could just completely, otherwise they can't make you pay a fine, is basically what they've told us. They don't have a law that gives them the teeth to make somebody pay a fine or impose any other penalty on them. But if you're accepting subsidy, of course, that would be the only thing they could do, is just turn off your ability to collect subsidy.
Hey, Julie, would this be something that would be appropriate for provider supports, and or has it already been discussed there?
I don't know. I get my meetings mixed up at this point.
I don't think it's ever been discussed there, Eric.
Okay, why don't I'll make sure that we're able to at least continue this conversation appropriately, so we don't, I guess, have a chance, to kind of move forward a little. I think it's an opportunity where if we did, take this to this group that you're talking about, and maybe it's a hybrid of a group that you guys want to have plus provider supports, but just being able to maybe identify that question you just said about not understanding and I just want to make sure I heard you correctly, that those that already have a license, if you no longer did, then DCYF could fine you, but those that don't have a license, there's really nothing they could do. So we can at least work on getting some clarification for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but at the same time, this group is putting forward the recommendations, and if that is not clear in the bullets, then we need to clarify.
Okay. Yeah.
Jess, can you pull up the Jamboard so we can do this with everyone seeing, so we make sure we're understanding?
I was just going to share, I think I'm totally misunderstood, because I thought what was going to happen today was that we were going to actually see the recommendations that got drafted based on the feedback, because this is like feedback that we're seeing here that are to be included in the recommendations. And then I thought today we were going to see the recommendations in there, kind of like at least where we're actually going to make edits to the recommendations. But what it looks like is these are just the feedback, and then we're supposed to turn the feedback into a recommendation. Is that what you're asking for? I mean, that's where I'm confused.
Yeah, so Emily.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yes, that was the intent of the activity. What I heard is that maybe it would be better if we came up with a draft statement and you guys either agreed or proposed changes to that.
Yeah, that's what I thought we were doing today. I didn't realize we were gonna be asked to take the feedback that we gave and try to turn it into a record. That's why I'm confused about what the process is.
Yeah, so there's two parts here, Susan. So you're right. We are going to look at all the other remaining topics that have been done, and you'll see the report after this. We were just trying to see if you guys wanted to weigh in on creating the recommendation for these two topics that we have not created an actual statement on yet, and get other feedback from you. But we can, while you guys are looking at the report, we can come up with statements for these two topics instead, if that's more helpful, and then work on that with you after looking at the full report.
I would leave that to the group on how they want to do it in that regard. But okay, I got it now.
Yeah, if it's easier that way, we can definitely look at it. Because we can just share the screen and share like kind of what it looks like currently and to give you an idea and how it's going. Because I know I heard some questions about like, if these comments going to be shared inside the report? And yeah, so I think it would be, what are your guys' thoughts? So we'll get group consensus. Do you want to just see the report of the recommendations that we have so far instead of looking at this and trying to come up with your own recommendation?
Can I offer a suggestion then? Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
how we do it at the collaborative task force meeting is there's a Google Doc and the facilitator says, do not edit the document. And then they set up groups like you do the breakout rooms, and everybody gives their feedback in those groups, but you can copy and paste, information so you can write in. There's different ways to do it because what we don't want is to see a final report or what looks like a final report, and then we're just going to get to see it. We want to be able to change it if we need to. So maybe there's another way to do it. I don't know, but I feel like, we're kind of going in circles because of the miscommunication about what the process is.
Well, and you guys already finalized recommendations. The ones we've put in this report, you've already finalized those recommendations. We already asked you, I think 2 or 3 times now, Emily, something like that, on edits to those other recommendations that are in the report. So we're not asking for edits on that. We are going to ask you on like the look of it and how you want to finalize the look of everything. But that's about it on the report part. So these 2 topics that we're talking about right now, the unlicensed care, these ones you all have not provided final approval of a recommendation yet. So that's why you don't see these in a report format. You see them how we've been reviewing all of the other topics up until this point. Does that make sense?
Can I ask, of the people on this call that are providers, have you seen the other recommendations that, because I'm drawing a blank on this.
Yeah, we sent them in a survey to everyone in this call. We talked about these. We can put the links to the minutes and everything in the chat.
Yeah, there were 2 different meetings where we went over the recommendations and then a survey was sent out last time. But Susan, if you remember at our last meeting, we talked about how a lot of you felt like you didn't get the survey, or that maybe wasn't the best way. So that's definitely something that we're considering moving forward too. And so if you all have additional suggestions on the best way to collect recommendations on these final topics, we're definitely open to them.
I would actually personally like to see the full recommended report in its entirety and have one last opportunity to make, to offer feedback in its, because I think it's also difficult to look at things piecemeal and not see how they work together. So that's how I look at it. But, and then I see Colleen put a recommendation in the chat that, I didn't read the whole thing, but maybe that we should look at that.
Yeah, so Colleen is suggesting write a basic recommendation now, the Bill of Rights recommendation, and then go through, Susan, the process you were talking about at another meeting to where we walk through the actual document, the report. Seeing the report right now, you're just not going to have all of this in there right now. The ones we're talking about today are not going to be in there because we needed to talk with you all, and then we would place it in there after we walked through this process with you. So there's a couple of things on today's agenda that we wanted to finalize before walking through the actual final report, because the things we're asking you today, we need confirmation on from you all before we finalize that part of it. Does that make sense?
So Deanna, at the end of the day, or at the end of our time today, we would like to have 2 written recommendations that will get added to that final document. And then that final document will still have a review at a meeting. Is that what I'm hearing you saying? Okay.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So I think that lines up with what I shared in the chat as far as like, we're not going to get to perfection on either of those recommendations. We have spent time on the other one. So I think when we plan that meeting to review the final document, there should be that caveat that these 2 recommendations have gone through less, review of process than the rest of them. So there should definitely be time to more fully review those ones and have them shared out and stuff in between. And then also just be able to look at the document as a whole. So I don't know if that, I just suggested a longer meeting. I'm really great about creating extra work, but that's kind of what I was thinking we were headed towards.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right on. So there's these 2 pieces that were on this Jamboard, and then we have another conversation that we were going to do after this conversation. So it would be 2 additional recommendations outside of these 2 topics. So we were hoping to get to 4 more recommendations based on meeting feedback we've heard and presentations. And then like you said, Colleen, at the next meeting, we would then go over the full report, knowing that these 4 new recommendations from today have not gone through the more scrutiny and the process of review with you all, like all the other topics have, or all the recommendations have. So in regards to these 2 topics, what would it be helpful for us to kind of like pause, create a recommendation statement, and then have you guys review that and edit that?
Yes.
I will say I do agree with Colleen's recommendation about the Bill of Rights, that we're recommending that one be created, but that we aren't going to put the Bill of Rights, the actual Bill of Rights in this recommendation. That's what I think, that makes the most sense. Is that what you're recommending, Colleen?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I don't think this group is poised to write that document right now, nor should the people who do the work to do that do it on a volunteer basis.
Right. Yeah, right. So that's what we had assumed as well. We assumed that you guys would not be writing that because 1, we don't have the time, because that one is probably going to be a little bit of a bigger document than this report even. So yes, but the recommendation of actually having one created, we've been hearing from you all from day 1 on that. So of course we know that that is definitely going to be a recommendation called out that needs to happen. Okay. All right, so can everyone either do thumbs up on the screen or or thumbs down whether you want us to draft some recommendation language for you to review, if that's easiest for these two topics right now. And we could like take a break and do that. That's thumbs up, thumbs down on that. Would you like us to draft some language for a recommendation for you to review off of these comments that we've received from you? Okay, so pretty much thumbs up everywhere. Okay, so then why don't we take maybe a 10-minute break and we'll come back. And Emily, do you want 10 or 15 minutes?
Let's do 15. We're scheduled to take a break from 2:25 to 2:45 anyway.
Okay. Okay, so then let's come back at 2:45.
Okay.
So that gives you a little over 20. But you can all get a snack or whatever, do some emails. And then we'll come back and share the recommendation language with you, and then we'll edit that. And then we'll go over the other two topics with you that we have on our agenda. Sound good? Perfect. Okay, so 2:45. All right, so we're gonna type in the chat. Emily, do you want to do it in the chat and just have it reviewed like that? Because then it'll be easier to look at for everybody, and we'll read it off too. So we did the unlicensed care recommendation, and then the other one. So the first one, unlicensed care, based on all the feedback and the new feedback, and then the old feedback that we got. So based off provider experience, we recommend DCYF instill the below recommendations around unlicensed care. Increase supports for providers to allow more guidance and accessibility to become licensed. Make licensing requirements more equitable to increase the early learning field of providers. Establish a registry that includes license exempt preschools, and develop a new team within DCYF solely focused on unlicensed care, which would include imposing fines, fees for the operation of unlicensed care facilities, notification and education to families, unlicensed care campaigns, etc. So those four to us seem to encompass all of the comments. But
Okay,
Julie,
can we take a minute? Because I have to read through things with my own voice.
Yes.
Like, you know, okay.
You don't like me reading to you, Julie?
I love it. I guess we need to compare it to the Jamboard and see if there's anything missing. Yeah.
Can you share the Jamboard? There you go. There's page 1.
Yeah, I have I'm not sure where I see in here, we're asking for increased supports for providers to allow more guidance and accessibility to become licensed. What is that recommendation based on in this feedback?
Bullet 4, have support like early achievers give guidance to become licensed. There's the reduced licensing requirements, some more will become licensed. And then we did have a couple of questions because there's a contradiction. So during this presentation, it says any person providing any amount of childcare should have to apply to be license exempt, require minimum requirements of background checks and CPR first aid. But then on page 2 of this Jamboard, Jess, can you go to page 2 really quick? It says all care should be licensed, including under 4 hours of care, nanny shares, and unlicensed full-day childcare that is reported. So those contradict each other. So we left them off completely because we don't know which way you guys want to go.
So leaving them off is not what we would want. That's my opinion. I think what we're trying, I'm sorry, go ahead, Julie.
Oh, where's the contradiction? I guess I missed that. I don't know if I got sidetracked in my thought there, thinking about something else.
I think because of the feedback, it says that license exempt provider, something about, it didn't say they should become licensed. It just said they should be, what does it say again?
On page 1, it says any person providing any amount of childcare should have to apply to be licensed exempt. So they can be exempt from licensing.
I think what we mean by that is that if you're claiming that you're exempt, that you should have to apply for it, for one, I think, and that they should have to go through the background check. That's one recommendation, that if exempt is going to exist, what's the process for them? And I think the other thing is that if we could go the route where, because if we really care about the safety of kids, then anyone providing care should be licensed.
Right. But they can be license exempt. They can apply to be license exempt, right?
Well, that's always been the problem. So the problem has always been is if you're not licensed, then you either can become exempt, and then that still means there's less things that you have to do than a licensed program has to do, which is problematic for the licensed program. They're like, then why do I have to do everything? So that's always been a problem. And then the second problem is if you're not licensed at all, there's no number to call, there's no negative ramifications for that program or person who has all those families there. And then it's not in the law, so then it goes to CPS, and then it goes back and forth to DCYF, so nothing ever happens. So those are the two main problems that have always existed, and nowhere on here is that really addressed. In number 4, in my opinion, doesn't say that.
I also would say, Deanna, that if, let's say, for example, that we make the recommendation that all people providing care other than their own kids need to be licensed, and that's not adopted, that's, then what is the next layer? If we're going to allow for exempt programs, what should that look like? So I think it's not an either or, I think it's a both and it's how do we write it so that it is inclusive of both, because I think in hindsight being 2020, we don't want any exempt programs.
Right.
That's the only way to have a level playing field. And it's also the only way to meet the goal of increasing licensed slots, which is what FSKA wants us to do.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying, is that it actually is both, and they're not contradicting each other. That's why they're both there.
No, that helps, because we did not read it like that, and we did not know the context behind this one in particular on this page. So we need to add a fifth one that talks about requiring every facility in Washington State be licensed.
Well, we're also noticing, Deanna, that nanny shares are popping up.
Yeah, I've seen those myself. So that's a little different. Now that, to me, the nanny share piece would fall under this new team. They would have to go out and scout unlicensed care, period. Whether that's a nanny share, a facility, it doesn't matter, a building, a home, They would have to do that. That would be required under number 4. And then from there, we should still have an overarcher outside of these 4 requirements or recommendations. We should have a 5th one that states we'd like a requirement in place that all childcare, no matter how many hours, 0 hours and up, need to be licensed and follow the same rules and regulations as everybody else. So write in something like that, right? And then we can add in number 4 to say something, scout, unlicensed care, look for, basically this whole team would just be out in the field looking for unlicensed care. Does that capture both of those?
Yeah, there should be a team looking, and there should be also an easy way to report that doesn't go through CPS.
Right.
And it should capture all care. If you are a nanny, you should still be registered somewhere to make sure that I don't know. I think nanny shares are more concerning, but I don't know. The department has that C in their name for a reason. Like, they're supposed to be watching out for the health and safety of all kids.
Right.
And the idea that somebody can just, I mean, we all see it on these, childcare Facebook pages. Somebody will just say, hey, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'd love to have like 4 other kids, They don't do background checks. They don't do anything. But if she called herself a nanny, then nobody cares.
But it also waters down that what's the profession, which we already have a problem with that anyway, of respecting the profession. And so, and the credibility of what we do. So when we say we can't do XYZ because of licensing requirements, and they're like, well, over there is doing it, it's always this tit for tat. And parents don't understand. They just want someone to watch their child because they have to go to work.
Yeah. Right. And I think, so for number 5, does it sound like number 5 on here, require all childcare within Washington state be licensed and follow the rules and regulations? Should we change it to say, require all care of children within Washington state be licensed, all care of children, no matter hours, get provided. I'm going to type it out. I'm getting confused just saying it, so.
And thanks for that edit for the first sentence, Susan. I have changed that. So now the first sentence reads, based on provider feedback informed by their experience, we recommend DCYF include the following recommendations regarding unlicensed care. And then it will start going to the numbers.
Okay, so this is kind of clunky, but require all care of children, regardless of hours provided, of Washington state be licensed and follow the same rules and regulations of DCYF. So feel free to edit that, but.
Well, then there's with the caveat of that, what we really need to do is change the licensing part. So I'm always hesitant to say yes to something like that, given the current, in terms of the end of the statement, but I think that captures it. But
Yeah,
also,
I'm a yes, but there needs to be another bullet saying that something like one of the reasons so many people avoid licensing is because of the mass overregulation.
Well, and that's in 1, 2, right? So make licensing requirement more equitable to increase early learning.
Yeah, but what do you mean by equitable? I'm not sure that's the right word for it.
You can change that. We just threw it together based on your guys's, the feedback we read. So these are for you guys to look over right now and come up with.
Yeah, it should just be, licensing should be basic, like it used to be. Basic licensing, people would get that. It's this next level that you got to do all this other stuff that we're stuck in, that people are like, forget that. But if it was basic health and safety, everybody should do that.
Well, now it's more political and education, what your education has to be, and
Exactly. All that is just getting out of control.
what degrees accepted, what degrees not accepted. It's going to be categorized in ECE or school age, you know, that's where it becomes all of the problems. And a lot of times providers that are currently in the field get out of the field because they can't make those requirements. And especially people of color, where they do it out of their homes. And so then they become unlicensed care. So that's just like a short example, but it's a systematic thing. And so if you're looking at part of the systems that need to be addressed, then the structure has to be changed. But if you're center-based and you want to have more than 25 kids, you typically got to come out of pocket at least $100,000 to bring everything up to code. And then that's where it's not an equitable issue.
So what about, instead of saying equitable, we say, I just put it in the chat, make licensing requirements focused on basic health and safety to increase the early learning field of providers. Does that work, or is there another line we want to add? Brian?
Maybe the piece that I would do is that you can make any requirement as long as it's funded. So I think there's a piece to all this, is that all these expectations are unfunded mandates and expectations. So maybe that's changing the equitable source of this, is that everything that we've put out there for requirements and expectations are all set on these boundaries of funding. Well, make them equitable by making sure the funding's accessible for everyone.
Yeah, Julie's edit has a typo, but more achievable, I think, is where I would go with it.
For me, where the equitable piece comes into is more related to education attainment, because there isn't equal access to education. And I think that's where some of the language about equitable comes into play. And so that was my that's, you know, my sense of that, but that's going to be addressed in another area anyway.
Oh, Emily, you copied my typo.
Sorry. I probably put it that way in my other notes too. Yeah, I did. Now
I think just get rid of the first on.
We're focusing only on, okay.
And then maybe we could address what Brian was saying in like a number 3. I know there's already a number 3, but to put one right after that, that says something about additional licensing requirements must be, I don't know, tied to a funding source. I'm not sure how to word that. Susan?
Well, we've used the language of unfunded mandates before, and maybe we try to incorporate something about any new licensing regulations implemented. I mean, it's kind of like there should be a cost, I mean, not a cost benefit, but I'll use the diaper changing rule as an example. You know, some people would have to invest in remodeling to address when they did that, but others would, you know, only have to maybe do minor remodels. And so I think DCYF should have to do the study of what the financial implications on a business are, besides, in addition to the safety things. And if it's really just safety, then we should do it, but then don't just not fund it you know, that's where I think we run into trouble is we want kids to be safe, but because of all of our tight margins, we don't have extra money to do the things that with the mandates that come out that are good, that should be fun, that we should do.
Okay, but we need a sentence.
Okay, let me think for a second.
Right.
Well, and I was gonna say, I think this one should go under when we talk about the petition rulemaking process, not under here, unlicensed care.
Oh. That's fair.
So keep thinking of your sentence, Susan, because we're going to come back to that and have that conversation here in a second. But I think it better is suited more under the rulemaking petition process, because that is going to be one of our conversations we have before we end today.
So then do we want to end? Go ahead, Julie. I think I interrupted you. Oh, okay. Did I interrupt someone? Did someone jump in? Okay. So do we just want to end the second bullet, or not bullet, but the second recommendation, make licensing requirements more achievable by focusing only on health and safety of children? Leave that and then discuss the funding additional requirements in the rulemaking petition process. Is that the thought? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put this in the chat again as it is. And give you guys a moment to look it over and see if that sounds good for unlicensed care and if we should move on to the provider bill of rights.
Can we have number 3 also address, like, include license exempt preschools and other unlicensed I mean, no, probably not. Are nannies license exempt? Like, how does that work? I don't know.
So I have a question for that, Julie. Because of the comment below about making everyone licensed, I think maybe this needs to be a sub bullet of that saying if exemptions are allowed, there should be a registry created.
Yes,
to
that
share.
makes so much sense. Yeah.
Okay.
So are we thinking, does that eliminate number 3 then? And we'll just add the sub bullet under what will now be number 4. Am I understanding that right? Here, I'll put it in the chat how I have it now. So right now we have number 3, which says establish a registry that includes license exempt preschools. And number 5, which reads require all care of children regardless of hours provided of Washington State be licensed and follow the same rules and regulations of DCYF. And then a sub bullet, if exemptions are allowed, a registry of license exempt facilities and providers needs to be created.
And updated and maintained, like, yeah.
So do we think adding that sub bullet, does that kind of make number 3, should we remove number 3 or still leave it?
No, otherwise it's listed twice. I don't
Okay.
think you leave it. Yeah, might not leave it.
All right, so I'm gonna put this in again. Now we just have 4 recommendations. And the sub bullet now reads, if exemptions are allowed, a registry of license exempt facilities and providers needs to be created, updated, and maintained.
Yeah, is there anybody on here that knows if license exempt programs have to get background checks? Do they have to do anything? It seems like there should be some requirements for those programs.
Eliza, do you have an answer for that?
Just from a business standpoint, I don't know how they would get insurance without having some sort of, it would just be too much of a liability.
Elisa may have had to step away, but we will add that to the feedback loop and we'll do some digging, Julie, and figure that out. Are you specifically asking about nannies or?
The registry of license exempt programs.
I doubt they have insurance.
I doubt it too.
Yeah, no, that was Brian's comment about the insurance. I'm just saying that if there is a registry of license exempt programs, a lot of those are preschools that operate 4 hours or less per day. And I'm interested to know if there's any requirements on them. Do they have to have a background? Like, I do not think there's a single requirement on them.
They don't, Julie.
And so I feel like that should be a recommendation also, that the registry should include some basic requirements.
And it shouldn't just be early learning. There are school age programs that are like nutso that are unlicensed, that do full day summer camp, 11 hours a day in the summer. They do before and after school in the school year. They transport the kids on vans, but yet, and I've reported them and nothing has happened and they still operate and they are not licensed. In fact, when you call them and ask, because I've done this, about, oh, are you guys licensed? They say, oh, we don't have to be licensed because all of our staff are certificated teachers.
So what if in number 5, sub-bullet A?
Do we have a 5?
I'm sorry, number 4. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm just making numbers up. So, okay, number 4, sub-bullet A, if exemptions are allowed, a registry of licensed exempt facilities and providers needs to be created, which would include background check status, and then anything else you want to include, and then say updated and maintained on a regular basis. Sorry, did I cut someone off?
No, I was just saying that it should also include an application process. Like, they should have to prove that they're exempt, not just say they're exempt.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, because this is what would you want? Because it's on here, one of the comments on here is the background checks and basically the minimum requirements. What would someone who has license exempt need to be required to have in order to qualify as a license exempt facility? So include that in this one statement so it's very clear and specific of what your recommendation is for this registry.
For me, it would come down to a background check, CPR and first aid at a very minimum.
And what about the child molestation, the mandated reporting stuff? For exempt.
You mean taking a mandated reporter training?
Yeah, because would they be mandated reporters just like the rest of childcare?
God, I would think so.
I would hope so. I mean,
they should get the training then too.
Coming at this from a parent perspective, what would you as a parent want to have at a, let's say, I'm just going to pick on YMCA. I'm just using an example. So, but if your child is going to the YMCA, what would you want them to have set in place, even if your child is only there for 2 to 4 hours, right? And like you said, minimum, Julie, for you is background check, and then CPR first aid. Is there anything else?
Well, it's interesting that you brought up the Y, because the Ys fought a lot of this for a long time because they weren't licensed. but the pressure of families wanting to be on subsidies is what forced them into this. So it's sort of like, should there also be a PR campaign to talk about what's licensed and what's not, and be aware of dangers? I mean, what group should be saying that?
Yeah, and that's in the team. We put that under the team to create unlicensed care campaigns.
Yeah, because what forced the Ys into doing it is because parents started wanting subsidies too.
Well, in a neighborhood that we were in, a Boys and Girls and Club that was unlicensed became licensed because our quality was so different that they were losing kids from their program to ours.
Right.
So they became licensed as well and then improved their quality. So this is why I think that exempt thing is a problem, because, you know, we clearly show, we can, you know, there's stories of how quality improved because of licensing being modeled in other places. So, but I think I agree with Julie that this basic safety stuff should be, first they should have to apply and say why they're exempt, and then an approval process that says, yes, you are, or no, you aren't. And then two, the safety stuff, the criminal background check, and the child molestation, the mandated reporter training. Those are the things they should, at a minimum, I think they should have to do.
Well, initially when things were not exempt, it was usually because of the location, or there wasn't the adequate playground, or there was reasons why exempt became an option, but now exempt is a loophole. And so when I think of, if I was a parent and I'm going to an exempt program, maybe it's exempt because of the building that it's located in, and there's something about that area where it doesn't meet licensing requirements, like it's a structural thing or something that can't be changed, or there's not a playground but they're going to the park, something like that. But not exempt, kind of like cut and dry as in nonprofit versus profit. I just throw that out there, kind of how things are thrown around when it's exempt versus not exempt, license versus exempt, because a lot of us now don't really know what an exempt program is. Besides a program that operates under 4 hours of care, then they can be exempt.
Okay, so what if we did under the A, so we'd add the little thing, which would include publicized or publication, I cannot talk, publication of exemption qualifications, background check, first aid, CPR. I thought there was another one that I'm forgetting at the moment.
Well, right now, sorry, Deanna, right now it reads, if exemptions are allowed, a registry of licensed exempt facilities and providers needs to be created, including an application process, mandated reporter training, CPR first aid training, and background checks. The registry should be updated and maintained.
And publicly available.
Updated, maintained, and publicly available. So then, sorry, Deanna, to interrupt, what were you wanting to add?
Okay, I'm reading it, sorry. I was saying, so needs to be created, and then you already have registry should be, and publicly available, right? But okay, that's fine. I would add, the only thing I would add then, the registry should be updated and maintained on a regular basis and made publicly available.
I just wanted to point out, I put in the chat the number 2 with a second sentence to try to address the thing about the unfunded part.
Okay, I'm putting it in the chat again with your edit, Susan.
It's just a suggestion. It was the best I could do under pressure.
Okay, well, my computer has decided to freeze, so I'm not putting it in the chat right now, but I'm working on it. Okay, I cannot get my computer to paste right now. But I took your edit, Susan. So I made the last edit we just said and took Susan's edit. Is there anything else we want to edit on this recommendation? Or do we want to move on to?
Well, could we, I mean, if people can, I mean, I don't want you to just adopt it because I don't know what other people think of that sentence. So it would be good to if, where did it go? Do you want me to just place that section of it in the chat?
Sure, yep, I see it in the chat. So I think if everyone else, I can read it too for those who don't have.
Oh, maybe I
access.
didn't put it, okay, there, this is the second sentence right there. To number 2.
So Susan added, should this recommendation, so I'll read the whole thing for those who can't see the chat. Make licensing requirements more achievable by focusing only on health and safety of children and fund any additional requirements. Should this recommendation be adopted, we further recommend that any new licensing rules that have a financial impact should also be supported with funding from DCYF.
Yeah, that could have a financial impact.
Oh, could, yeah, okay.
Okay, I will add in could.
Or may have. I just wouldn't want them to decide that there's no financial impact across the board.
Okay, and then for the provider Bill of Rights. Oh, now it's working. So let me paste that. This is the recommendation we have for the provider Bill of Rights, and it's Colleen's recommendation minus the parentheses. So if you guys want to add specific stakeholders or groups to call out, just let us know. So it reads, a provider Bill of Rights should be created in partnership with the Provider Support Subcommittee of Elac to help eliminate confusion around licensing rules and regulations. And then is there?
I was just going to add with the caveat that provider supports then would either, or they could recommend or suggest a subgroup with other people being a part of that, like WCCA or regional advisors, whatever that looks like. They could come to this other subgroup if a lot of the members from provider supports didn't want to participate. So basically it'd be like a secondary meeting and a secondary group. We did say in partnership so that it's not just DCYF creating it. We wanted to be clear and call someone out, which is a DCYF advisory body.
Right. Can we list DCYF in there somewhere though? They're the ones that we want to collaborate with, right?
Well, the intention of what I wrote was to maybe suggest that DCYF is not who is in charge of creating this Bill of Rights, but rather a neutral party is chosen or some other entity is chosen to do the work. Yes, we could choose DCYF, but the reason I put the parentheses and listed other organizations is because we could include in our recommendation it being a different organization to do that work than being housed within DCYF. I fully agree with the partnership with provider supports and our ELAC. But I do think that we could strengthen this by suggesting another organization outside of DCYF.
Yeah, they don't need to be in charge of it, but I do want them to be present because we need them to agree with what comes out of it. I know that when Judy came to the last meeting, it was really helpful when she was able to say, this could work by doing that, or this can't work because of this or that. It's still helpful to have them in the room.
And who created the foster care one? Was it strictly DCYF?
So the foster care one, yeah, the DCYF initially, well, actually DSHS, because that started back at DSHS under Children's Administration.
Okay.
And then it's actually in legislation that foster parents review that document every year. So it's in partnership right now. We led the first annual meeting last year with foster parents. And then there's going to be another one in October, a secondary one. So I hear what Colleen, you're saying about adding, and we can definitely do that, add in someone else. Like maybe it's, because honestly, what you're going to come down to, if you start adding entities, you're really going to need like WCCA and the union or family home providers, FFN, because you're going to want to make sure it's representative. However, I will say the foster parent rights and responsibilities document is really just a document listing out WAC.
Yeah, well,
RCW and WAC.
For me, this Bill of Rights was not intended to clarify any confusion around licensing rules and regulations. It was what are our rights as, kind of like how our, it's, like we have the right to, have, I'm going to just use this as an example, be respected for the work that we do. We have the right to be compensated, whatever. I'm just making this stuff up right now, but
that's still, but because we're dealing with a state agency, I think it's still they're gonna want to throw a whack to it. So that's gonna be the problem, is because we're dealing with a government entity. So as soon as you say you have somebody gonna say, where is that right at? Where it's what law is that referencing to it? That's why it makes sense. The foster care one is because it spells it out in law. This is what you must do. If we start saying that we have the right to do some stuff that is not written that's not a law, then who's gonna enforce it?
I was just gonna ask that, Angie, like, where is there, and I don't know, so I'm legitimately asking this question, is there any RCW WAC that lists out a provider's rights other than the responsibilities of being licensed?
Right, so we might be creating something that needs to be in law, that needs to be implemented, that we are respected at a B, C, D, whatever level. I mean, I just know that the government entities are not going to create something that is a Bill of Rights that is not a law, or there's not or a something, a best practice. I don't even know if they're going to do a best practice. So I just think we have to be careful about that, because they really like all of us, and we're the same way. We say the same thing. Prove it. Is it a whack? It's not a whack. I ain't doing it, So we do the same thing. So I just want us to be careful that we're not trying to ask them to create something that is not going to be. It's the same thing with the health department. When they tell me that there's things that's their recommendation, I don't even pay attention to it. I'm like, thank you. Recommendation, good. It ain't a whack. So I want us to be careful with what we're asking.
So maybe then this needs to be phrased differently.
Yeah, Susan, I'll drop that in just a second. It is in the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which have not been sent to you guys yet, so you don't have them yet, but you will.
Susan, what you want is an appreciation statement, a respect for the work that we do. But
I think it's more than that. I can't remember what was in that example that I sent, but it was something that we were supposed to use as a model, I guess, to, you know, like, so we're not starting, you know, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
well, the example that I thought we got was the one from the foster families.
That doesn't work. The link is
Yeah.
broken. Yeah, the foster care one was a great example because it did link to the law. So a person knew their right, and then they could click on the law to see it in black and white in law, in our CW. And that's, I don't think there's a lot of laws that we're going to be able to link to, and we're probably going to need to come up with something that we ask someone to create some of these laws. I don't know why these links are not working.
I'm putting it in. I found it based on that information.
Oh. Yeah, there's not a single law in the books that's going to support these in the list, in this provider Bill of Rights in Utah. And they probably don't have any law. They probably can't say, but it says here, I have to be treated with respect and valued as an individual. And licensor is like, whatever. So it's a nice statement, but we need an example of one that has, you know.
And then what I get tired of is we have to be so careful because, you know, if you tell me that I need to be treated with respect, then you got to define what that respect is then. So, you know, in Washington State, and especially in Seattle, we are real nitpicky. So when you start saying, you got to do this, you got to do that, okay, define it. So we have, you know, we're going down a rabbit hole that is a good one. I agree with this, but, you know, we got to start then making it a definition. Because your level of respect might be different than my level of respect.
Yeah, I already reached out to somebody that has ties to a lot of providers in Oregon, and all of the Oregon providers were surprised that anybody thought they had a Bill of Rights. So I don't know.
But I think one of the things that this Bill of Rights does, like, and this is just an example, it doesn't have to say this, but like, I didn't know until the last few years that I had the right to appeal.
Yeah, none of us did until Tyler Farmer told us we did.
You know, and that's an example of what, you know, that lack of transparency that we want a Bill of Rights to tell us. And that's, you know, so maybe we don't want to say.
But maybe we don't call it a Bill of Rights. Maybe we got to call it something else.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of the problem is that we want to know what happens when there's an investigation, when there's a complaint against you, when it's a licensing visit because of a complaint, or when it's CPS in getting involved because of a complaint. We wanted to have a Bill of Rights, what a provider could point to and say, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right. It says here
that is a whack then, Julie. So that is, so I'm saying.
But the problem is that there is not a state policy. I mean, when I was told by Luba that everybody has to handle that in their own region. There is no state overarching policy for those kinds of investigations.
So maybe it's not a Bill of Rights necessarily. It's more of a provider
memorandum of understanding.
Yeah, sign here.
Well, maybe what we should do.
Rights and responsibilities.
Well, let me just say this, because what Julie is saying is right and what Susan is saying is right, but they're two different things in my mind. Maybe we need to list all the things that we think we want a Bill of Rights for, and we should find out if they have a WAC or don't have a WAC. And then we would know, okay, like 6 out of the 10 things we really think we need a Bill of Rights for are a WAC and 4 are not, or all 10 have no WAC. I'm just thinking maybe we should come up with these things And then we can decide if they're a Bill of Rights or if they need another phrase.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it is maybe it's more of a rights and responsibilities document.
That's what we called it before, and our responsibilities are to adhere to the WACs. I firmly believe we need a Bill of Rights. The content of it, should be, like the fact that I just learned recently that I had the right to appeal. I didn't know I had that right. I thought I just had to do everything I was cited for by licensing. I should have been told that at orientation.
So maybe it's provider rights and resources instead of remove responsibility, because you all know what responsibilities are because it's listed in legislation. But if we start somewhere, to your point, Angie, like if we need to name something, and then this group that gets together to do this document will do what you just talked about, is go through, identify WAC that exists, identify what resources need to be laid out so that when somebody becomes a provider, even current providers, they understand what their rights actually are, whether they can appeal, create a petition, whatever that might be. So all of that is listed in this document. Because the responsibility part, that's where it's going to just become this document of WAC. And that's not what you guys want.
Colleen, speak up.
I didn't want to interrupt because I was going to kind of steer the conversation a little differently. So I put some language in the chat. I really got stuck at my point of even trying to list things out. So where I said, including but not limited to a means of requesting reevaluation of licensing decisions, I'm talking about like the appeals process and all those different things. So I think there actually probably needs to be a few, if not several more things added to that statement that I shared there. But, whatever we decide to call the document, I think, what we're here today and can decide on, like what Angelia was talking about, would more be the work of then this group that's created to create the document, and definitely a great process to go through for that. But yeah, I think that we could, if everybody can chime in and add to kind of what that, and I'm not saying you have to go with the words that I used either, like I'd like, people can edit that or change it. And literally my brain just like stopped after I got one thing when I meant to have a list of things. But does everybody feel like that's going more in the direction that we want to see for our recommendation or not?
I don't know, if it was called provider rights and resources, I would read that more so than I would the Bill of Rights. Bill of Rights, I'm like, that's going to be a long list of something that is going to get too deep and complex that I don't want to read. Just initially off the bat.
I feel you.
That's great, Erica. Thanks for that perspective.
That is also going to include, to your what you're trying to point out, Colleen, some of this, what you guys are sharing, we can also add to the comments, right? So these bullets, we can add like this document should include these types of things. So it's not all in this long-winded recommendation per se, it's the context that supports the recommendation.
Does the group have an organization that they want to identify to create this document, or is that something that maybe provider supports decides on a different day?
I hate to pass the buck. I feel like we could figure it out.
Okay. Colleen?
Well, I'm going to do my shameless plug for WCFC because we are all talking about a neutral party that would obviously need to have access and ability to engage these stakeholders that we're listing here. That is work that WCFC does on a regular basis. We are having monthly meetings, convening people in all of these different topic areas with each of our networks. DCYF already has a mechanism to contract directly with WCFC and could pay us to do the work. I think the other option is to look at CCA in the work that they've done, like with the design team for compensation, and then being able to convene a group like that. I think that is also work that WCFC can stand for. WCFC stands for Washington Communities for Children. We are the 10 regional coalitions for early learning across the state. And we also have 7 learning networks in the different topic areas. So we have a child care voice group, which includes family home, child care centers, FFNs. We have health provider voice, family voice, and a few other ones. So we have folks and we're convening them already, and this is work that WCFC is capable of doing, but I know has not historically been the one looked at to do that work. So I wanted to put the plug there. Also appreciate the work that CCA, or at least what I've heard of the work that CCA has done with the design team around compensation. And Erica, your question about diversity of the group with languages and whatnot, we definitely have a much, or in comparison to many groups that I participate in, we definitely have a diverse group of stakeholders. When we're talking about the childcare group, we do have a large Spanish speaking population, and we host our meetings simultaneously in English and Spanish. So we have the Zoom capabilities and whatnot and translation available so that everybody can participate in the same meeting while obviously getting the information in their native language. So.
Thanks, Colleen. So I'm going to put that suggestion in the chat, and you guys can feel free to discuss or suggest other things.
I think the suggestion for CCA is also good because of their experience using liberatory design, which is part, and I think Colleen's group is also trained in that. So, and from what I've heard from Angie and others, that the liberatory design is, although can be long, is good.
Agree.
I agree. We're on the compensation. Is it, what's it called, Angie? Compensation something.
Something like that.
But I think a lot of times within these groups, and I can only speak from Seattle because we're over here, but it's a lot of these different groups are always the same people and they don't reflect the community, and so it becomes problematic because our experience with licensing is always different than a different group or the expectations. So there's a lot of inequities in this field, and that has to be addressed. But if moving forward, we can't negate that is an issue, and we have to go in consciously knowing that that's an issue and make sure everybody's represented at the table.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Erica. And I do think the way you guys wrote this, it does leave it open. You know, even if you identify one organization to create it, it leaves it open to a lot of feedback and partnership.
Well, and maybe as I'm hearing from everybody, maybe instead of naming one of those organizations or a different one, maybe we do want to call out that we would like to see liberatory design used as the tool or the process for creating the document, because then as you dive into that, you're quickly going to find that there are only certain organizations that are going to be able to do that. And And then we're getting to the point of what we want to see those organizations do, instead of just picking an organization because I happen to have the privilege to be sitting here today and have your guys' attention and can share what I think, doesn't mean that that's the group that should be chosen. But instead, maybe leaning towards more, what is our value? Our value is that an organization utilizes liberatory design to create this document and is bringing in the right people.
Okay, so what if we identify the recommendation as provider rights and resources document should be created utilizing the liberatory design process in partnership with DCYF, provider supports, Elac, WCCA, SEIU, 925, FFN. We can add in WCFC, etc., to articulate the details of processes and procedures that a licensed provider must navigate with DCYF.
Sounds good.
Okay, so then it doesn't necessarily identify someone, but it would continue the conversation and provider supports would be aware. That's probably where this would go next. At least that's how I'm reading it, is that it would be brought up at a provider supports meeting. And then maybe that's where the process to identify an organization who can.
Can I ask a question though?
Of course.
I mean,
Yeah.
all of the people that are, all the organizations listed there are childcare specific organizations with the exception of SEIU 925. So did you really mean family home providers, or did you literally mean SEIU 925?
I appreciate you calling that out. I was thinking more along the lines of family providers. And if we were to facilitate this in WCFC, I think the idea would be that you would have a certain amount of family home providers, whether or not they were union members, and you would probably also have a union representative just to be inclusive, because you don't want to work through this entire document and then have SEIU come back and say, oh, well, we weren't part of this process, right, so we're not going to approve it. Or
so what you meant was a unionized family home center, not actual SEIU rep.
Yeah, and even a non-union, I think you should also have non-union family home representatives too. Not, okay. I don't think we should be excluding any one of those, and also be reflective of the applications that you get. I'm not 100% sure of the process they went through with the design team, but I did go through the application and read it and that sort of stuff. And I think that they did a good job of trying to make sure they were being, you know, mindful of populations that didn't have access to these kinds of conversations and work before.
So
yeah, there is a family home association, just so you know.
Yes, yeah, you're right, Julie, there is too. So yeah, I don't think that this list was I didn't mean it to be exclusive, like that's it. I put the etc. because again, my brain stopped and I've all the rest of the creativity left me as far as coming up with other people to suggest. So you can almost always assume that when I use etc.
I just wanted clarification on what you meant by SEIU. Really what you mean is represented or unrepresented family home providers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So would you rather that I change the language instead of SEIU 925? Should I replace that with represented and non-represented family home providers? Should I change it or okay? All right, let me change that real quick. So now it reads, a provider rights and resources document should be created by an outside organization utilizing the liberatory design process in partnership with DCYF, provider supports, Elac, WCCA, represented and non-represented family home providers, FFN, WCFC, etc., to articulate the details of processes and procedures that a licensed provider must navigate with DCYF. Can we get maybe thumbs up or thumbs down if we agree with that language? Go ahead, Susan.
I was going to say, I mean, it's to articulate the details of it's really about to articulate. We already know what it's like, what is the, how do I don't know if I don't know that I think we need to have that last part of it. We just want to provide, you know, to develop the, I would take out the to part, from the to at the end.
I was going to say the same thing as you, Susan.
So if we remove that part, do we not feel like we need to, so I guess that statement was kind of getting to like, what do we mean by provider rights and resources? Like, I think we all agreed we didn't want a list of WAC codes. I think what we want is a list of, when this happens with licensing, here are your steps you can take to request an appeal, or do this or do that. Or, you know, if a licensor comes to your door, what things can they ask you for, you know, all those different sorts of things. I mean, even just being able to articulate the fact that, I mean, I had a licensor just yesterday ask me for video footage, when that's not something that's a requirement of us to have in our centers. So we don't have to stick with any of what I wrote. I'm just afraid that I don't want what the document we want to be misinterpreted of like what we want from the document.
And I hear you, but that to me, what it says here doesn't articulate to me what you just said, because it says here, articulate the details of processes and procedures that a licensed provider must navigate with. And what we're saying is basically we want to know where the boundaries are. You know, I mean, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it. I agree with what you're saying, that what is the intent, what is the purpose of the rights and resources. I'm not sure that explains to me what I think it is.
I fully agree with you. Again, today has been a very long day on Zoom, and I do not feel like the words I am typing are the ones that are in my head or otherwise. So quite literally, no offense to anybody wordsmithing that or saying something better. That was the only reason I even started trying to say those things, was like, I don't want DCYF to get to decide what is this document.
Yes.
We even all had a different reaction to titling it Bill of Rights, which means that we need to do something to spell out what document we're asking for.
Yeah.
If the title of the document or proposed title of the document doesn't articulate to us what we want. But yeah, my wordsmithing skills are just out the door today, guys.
No, but I think though that comes into play in the lower part where we talk about the content and why you came up with this recommendation. And that's where that's kind of called out, is what you all would like to include there. So we have the notes, and it will say, this should not be a list of WAC. This should be a list of rights, or our rights as a provider, what we have a right to do. Like you guys gave examples, appeals process, and all of that will be in the notes right below it to support that recommendation. So there will be some very key pieces here that are going to be called out. Because I read it the exact same way, Susan, that you're reading it. You could interpret that as, okay, well then a document of WAC. So I do feel like you don't have to spell it out necessarily in the recommendation. It will just be in that content that supports that recommendation listed below, because there will be that content listed. We will include that.
We don't have time to fully go through it, but if it's helpful, I can pull up the draft, how the report looks now, not in its final form, but to show you that it's recommendation then. So this is like the actual, all of the recommendations, and we're way down here on the ones we're still working on. So here's the recommendation, and then this is all of your feedback on that specific recommendation. So DCYF will have your feedback too, so it won't just be the recommendation with no context.
Yeah, and as will Elac, and if they put this in theirs, they can provide this context as well. And then whoever does this, like let's say this happens and there's a group that's created, then they will see this as well, the context of this.
That context is super helpful, because I didn't realize it was going to look like that either.
Okay, and you guys will, yeah, you'll have an opportunity to look at the report, obviously, because it's your report, and finalize everything and see how the layout is and make your suggestions. I want to recognize we don't have a ton of time left. I'm wondering if we can maybe get through, if we can look at the IRP. So, sorry, back up. Deanna, do you think we have time to quickly go over the internal review process panel recommendation, or should we push that to the next meeting?
No, I think it's fine if we can go through that really quick, because I mean, honestly, I don't think that's pretty general.
Okay, so a little bit of background. When going through the meeting minutes for all of our meetings that we've had for this group since January, the internal review process panel had come up in one of the earlier meetings. And we also had a provider email us asking to have that be included. Since we are at the end of our meeting schedule, we don't have time to request for an official presentation from DCYF on the internal review process panel. But the feedback that we had received was that providers are not sure where this process is. So we, based off of that, we did develop a draft recommendation language. We request an update on the status of this panel process. Sorry, that's informal, referring to the internal review panel process. Since some providers applied, were selected to join, but have yet to be contacted. So I wanted to put that out there to see if anybody else had any either context or feedback, or no, I don't agree with this recommendation. I know exactly what this is and it has been meeting, that sort of thing. And I can put a link into, we just have a couple minutes left, but for those of you who don't know what the internal review panel process is, I just put a link in the chat to it. It's overseen by the DCYF Oversight Board, or it's under the Oversight Board.
So what is it reviewing?
Well, Brian, I don't know if you're available, but you participated in this before. So I don't know if you want to share, if you are able to share anything about it. I don't know if his phone.
I can share too what's on the website. I don't have a ton of like firsthand knowledge of this, but the DCYF Oversight Board created the IRP as a mechanism to determine whether licensors, DCYF licensors, appropriately and consistently applied agency rules when issuing a violation against a child care facility. The intent of the process is to provide an option for child care providers who are licensed to have an additional review of DCYF violations made against the provider's site.
So mainly all that has come up is, it's come up in a few meetings that providers would like an update on where this is at. Because there's been a call for this to happen and nothing has happened. So really it's just providers would like an update on the process, what's going on with this. Because some people have applied to be on this group and have received approval letters that they have been selected to be on this group, but then no communication. And so really just providers in general, one, learn more about it, understand where it's at. So just having an update. Lois, I saw you unmuted. Go ahead. If you're talking, Lois, we can't hear you. Colleen, sorry, I saw you were unmuted too. Okay.
I'll chime in if Lois doesn't get a chance to.
Is a violation the same thing as the non-compliance thing when a licensor comes to your center? Okay.
Yeah, I know of a provider that asked to go to the next step after an appeal after a violation. They they told her there was no other step. And that seems odd, knowing that there's an internal review panel that was piloted. And then people applied to be on the real, the actual panel, and it was legislatively created. So, yeah.
Brian, go ahead.
I'm on that panel. Yeah, I'm on that panel, and I've never, not once, been communicated with, and I've talked to 3 different providers that asked for the same thing. They've asked to go up to the next level, and they've been told the same thing. There is nothing. So is Travis still on here? Maybe he can answer to it.
No, but that's why we put it in the recommendation, because it's come up a couple times during these meetings. And so we just wanted to put it in there, especially for those of you that have never heard about it, right? It goes back to, kind of goes back to the rights document. It's because it's something that providers should know about. So I know that Emily shared the recommendation. We just wrote a brief one solely based on comments that have been made throughout the course of holding these meetings that we felt like would be beneficial to have in this document, this report. So really it's just if you guys want to include it or not.
I think we should include it. How long ago did this panel get created?
It's been a while.
I've never heard
Applications
of
were
it.
in 2018 originally, I think. And then, yeah, they haven't ever. So it is supposed to be like, once you request a higher level beyond an appeal, it's supposed to go to this panel. And everybody that I talked to, and Brian, obviously, like, even though people have tried to push it that far, nobody's yet to get this review process to happen. And it was set up in the legislation, so.
Wow.
Yeah, and there is an application process on the Oversight Board website that you can apply to be on it. So
I thought that was already closed though, because they already selected people.
Well,
it's not on here anymore.
Oh, it's not on the Oversight Board?
No, I said you can. It says how to apply, but there's no link to apply.
Right. So yeah, it's still listed up there, but yeah, we kind of, because we did a little bit of digging to try to figure out if we could find anything on our end on it. So, okay, so Colleen approved it. Anyone else? Thumbs up. All right.
I did find the application, I guess, but it's not open anymore.
We don't really know.
Okay.
Submit it and see what happens, Susan. Let us know.
No, not doing it.
I applied back in 2018 and didn't get appointed, but Brian did. So he's held that over my head.
They don't want me.
I feel like I applied like a couple years ago and was told that they had already filled it, which I was glad to hear. I didn't want to really be on it. So. We could all email this Nicholas person and ask him. Or
what's so funny about this, when I had an issue, I actually called Frank Ordway and he resolved it for me. I didn't even know there was a panel. And it was a stupid thing and I was not going to have it. So I just decided to do that.
So maybe that goes into the rights document. If you don't get a review or an appeal process, then you call Frank Ordway, or I don't know.
That's so funny.
There is no panel.
With his number listed.
I was just going to say the same thing, Eric. Let's just also make sure direct cell phone numbers for all of those people are included.
But Frank and Allison and Ross. Yeah.
Make sure that everybody has access, not just those of us who happen to catch it accidentally included in an email.
I have not
Full
had
transparency.
a licensing issue in so long, and I feel like with this new pilot I'm in, we're going to just get written up like left and right. So we're just gearing up for that with this new pilot that we're in with the one licenser for all your sites. So we're like, okay, get ready.
But it goes to show why we need something, because I didn't even know there was such a thing. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I just called someone that I knew was higher up, and he helped me solve the problem. but it shouldn't take that. And it's, you know, I am fortunate that I have that connection, but it's through when he was with the League of Education Voters, not because he was at DCYF, but I knew he went there. That's why I did it. But that shouldn't be the case.
Well, Angela, you bring up a great group that we need to make sure we include, Emily, in doing the rights document, because that pilot group,
Right.
with the members of that, they should be included.
Yep, because they're on their own tangent right now.
Yep.
You're talking about OLP, organizational license.
Mm-hmm. I would even say like outdoor preschools,
yeah,
tribal. I mean, we should probably call out all of those. Sorry, I just like that came up when you mentioned that. Brian,
Yeah,
I saw
thanks
you.
for that. That was good.
I saw Brian come on camera and unmute, but I don't know. Then you went off, so maybe you don't want to speak. I find that hard to believe, Brian, so that's why I'm calling you out.
That's a fair assessment. Though I keep saying is I don't think the board does that. This panel doesn't exist. And as many times as I talk with Travis about it, I don't get a fair answer. I get a very obscure answer. So anyways, I've been pushing on it for almost 4 years. I was on the pilot 5 years ago. So I'd love to see it work. I think
Brian,
it's important.
Who else is on it? Do you know?
We've never convened. So I would,
Oh.
They've never convened.
Is there, can we find out who's on it? Like,
it's a great
Travis,
question.
yeah, Travis would know.
Well, I mean, that's something we can put in this recommendation. We can add that to the recommendation. Update on, you know, participants, who serves on this, when do they meet, when have they met, where is this information documented?
Can we ask about the financials of it too? I mean, if it was in legislation, then it must have been in a decision package to staff and so on and so forth. So if it was funded, where have those funds been spent?
Yeah, I doubt it was funded, but could ask.
You never know. Sometimes lots of money appears that was said didn't exist anymore and had already been spent to the tune of $20 million. So if you just keep asking at Elac, eventually somebody finds something.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Colleen, but
no, that was all theoretical, not
I know.
referencing
It's just,
anything.
yeah, hypothetically speaking.
I will say I've learned something new at almost every one of these meetings. And I'm always surprised.
When is the next one?
It is, I know I have it on my list here. October 19th.
19, yeah.
Does it have a time set already?
9 to noon.
Okay.
All right, well, I know we're over time and we didn't get to one of our items. So the rulemaking petition process conversation, I know you guys have some recommendations you want to make on that. So we will roll that one over to the next meeting when you'll also be reviewing the recommendation report.
In this process, I don't know how it worked for you all. It worked well for me.
Okay. And we can also take the suggestion to the Word document or the Google, not Google Doc.
Google Doc.
Google Doc, and work on the report that way next time too.
Yeah, and keep in mind, so I know Eric's going to be leading this next meeting. Keep in mind the document you will notice it does not have anything DCYF on it, because this is a document from you all, not from DCYF to DCYF, right? So it's intended to be very neutral, even though we're drafting it for you. We want it to look like it, you know, it came from you. You guys need to approve that. So if there's anything you want to edit Eric's going to do that with you next meeting. And then walk through, yeah, the remainder of these. So.
Okay, well, I'm gonna run. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to community engagement. I know how much work you guys have put into this, and I just appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks,
You
Julie.
guys have put in all of the work for this, and your feedback is, we
It's
obviously
a neat
couldn't
group.
do it without you.
A lot of time you guys have put in for this.
We really appreciate you.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, totally appreciate everything, and good luck on your trip. That sounds like a lot of fun. I love road trips, so have fun.
Thank you. I will try.
I know it's
Okay.
sad part of it because of your brother, but anyway, thank you so much. We'll see you all soon.
Thanks, you
Hi,
guys.
Susan.
Bye.